Alrighty, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. I would like to welcome you to FRN's first ever Roundtable Talks. So over the week, we talked with various different stakeholders and groups within our network. We had 245 people sign up to our Roundtable Talks throughout the week, and this recording is for a roundtable recap. So we'll be going over what we shared in those conversations that we had, along with direct questions that we got from our audience to just showcase a little bit about the conversations that we've had thus far. I'm very excited. My name is Cassie, and I'll be chiming in here and there as Katie and Regina are speaking through this presentation today, and I will be also going over some questions at the end, but I will go ahead and get it kicked off with Regina if you want to get us started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cassie. Thank you for being our wonderful facilitator, moderator for this recap. I'm so excited about this for a few different reasons. The first is the reason why we have these roundtable conversations in the first place was to bring everybody up to speed on the work that FRN has been doing over the past decade and the 5 years that I've been at FRN over the past 5 years and what has brought us to this place. And then thinking about where FRN is going into the future and how we'd like to bring everybody along in that journey as well, because we need everybody here. The other thing is that with the roundtable talk, we got to introduce Katie Jones, our first ever Chief Operating Officer. And so I'm just so thrilled that we were able to do that as well. And the other thing that I will say about the roundtable conversations that's so important and so critical is that you're going to hear a lot about this from Katie and from me during the conversation, which is what's bringing us to this conversation is that we want to think about, you know, the space and the place that we're in right now within living in a pandemic and the very disastrous things that has highlighted around our food system. And we want to think about what the food system can look like when we get on the other side of that. Let's start highlighting and talking about the opportunities that we see, how our stakeholders can be engaged in that, how FRN, you know, wants to help support all of this. So there's a lot to dig into during the roundtable talks. So we're excited to, as I said before, to recap that. The goals of the conversation that we had among our variety of stakeholders are here. And another theme that you're going to hear is that we really want all of you to be involved with FRN. We want this to be a multi-directional conversation among our stakeholders, among FRN National, among students and alums. So you're going to hear that a lot during this recap conversation as well. And there is a huge invitation to be in touch with us, you know, even after you listen to this recording. So with that, I'm going to turn things over, as I said, to Katie Jones, Food Recovery Network's first ever Chief Operating Officer, to walk us through more of the conversation today.
Hi, everyone. I am delighted to be here with you all and to walk you through our strategic framework. Before I get into the details, I just wanted to share a little bit about how we came up with this framework. And it is largely adapted from a results count framework. Results count is a methodology that was developed by the Annie E. Casey Foundation out of Baltimore, and it is a data-driven methodology to close racial and ethnic disparities in our work. And this has always been a value of FRN's, and using the results count framework is really codifying how FRN works in communities across the United States to close racial and ethnic disparities. So I'll get a little bit more into how that's specifically going to show up in our strategies, but I wanted to share a little bit about why we chose that framework and how it was adapted from Annie E. Casey. So diving right in, as you can imagine, a results count framework is grounded in a results. And other companies and other organizations have other names for the results. You know, big, hairy, audacious goal is one that is often used among corporations. And so for us, the result that we are anchoring ourselves in is to recover surplus food to feed everyone who is hungry in the U.S. And there are many, many reasons why people recover surplus food, and that is incredibly important work, particularly in this time of COVID. And our hope in declaring this result is to be clear of the to what ends, because we want that perfectly good food that would otherwise be thrown away to actually go to feed people who need it, particularly in this time. So, as this is a data-driven methodology, one of the ways FRN is going to hold ourselves accountable to this work is actually looking at disaggregated data to say, are we actually making progress on our results? And for that reason, we're actually going to be looking at two specific factors. One, about the amount of excess food in commercial and institutional settings. So do we believe FRN's core or bedrock work in mitigating waste and recovering surplus food actually brings those numbers down? And so we will be in a public learning process in terms of how those indicators are turning based on our work. Additionally, and we'll get a little bit more into the details of this, we also want to look at why are people hungry in the first place? And does FRN actually have a broader systems change role in actually shortening the line of the number of people who are hungry in the United States? And we know one of the reasons that there are so many people experiencing hunger is because of deep economic insecurity. So we believe, and we'll get a little bit more into this, that FRN actually has a role in securing economic viability for the millions of people who have traditionally been food insecure in this country. Before I move on, something that's really important to note about results count framework and these indicators is FRN realizes that we are only one actor in this very big, broad work. And part of what results count helps us to do is better identify other organizations who are aligned in the same values and the same types of work so we can be more effective in our impact. So as Regina was saying, there's very much a request out there to say, like, please be in touch with us, because we believe by actually being incredibly methodological in our approach, we can actually have a bigger impact faster in curing some of these deep systemic inequities that are in our country. So with that said, how is FRN? What is our specific work that we're going to do to help contribute to this larger change work? And the first thing that we're going to do is continue doing everything that we've already done and that you have come to rely on FRN to do. We are going to continue to engage students at colleges and universities across the United States to recover food from local businesses, from their local dining providers, to repurpose it within the community. That is critical work, particularly in this time of the pandemic, and it is critical work as we move forward and we'll be on the other side of the pandemic. So we will continue to do that in our work. We will also, as part of that, be more transparent in terms of both requesting data from our stakeholders as well as sharing the data that we are seeing from our stakeholders. What this idea is, if we can begin to be more intentional about our impact and disaggregating our data in a meaningful way, we'll be able to direct our resources and our efforts to the areas that need it most. The second way that we are actually going to be working to achieve this result is both a combination of something FRN has historically done and a bit of new work. So one of the things we learned when we were talking with stakeholders and looking at disaggregated data from prior evaluations with alumni, students, dining providers, etc., is we know that because students who participate in FRN have such a rich experience, they actually see their contribution to the workforce differently. And that can mean a lot of different things. There are some people who specifically change majors and they actually change what the contribution that they want to have in the world because they're so compelled by this work. There's some people who continue on a particular track, say it be architecture or interior design, but because they've had this experience at FRN, they actually know how to make those companies more sustainable. And they can bring sustainable practices to companies or types of fields that haven't traditionally seen that. And so what we look to do in this second strategy about increasing impact is really to codify and formalize a workforce development program. And we are really seeking out partners that will help be a brain trust with us in developing a program that both incentivizes workforce development as well as job creation in sustainable jobs. We are specifically looking also in our outreach work to target areas of the country that FRN actually doesn't have a lot of footprint in, but there is an incredible need for our services. So this is really where you see the disaggregated data showing up in our work. First and foremost, what we did is we actually looked at the EPA's map of where in the United States is there the most amount of excess food in the country. And then we took that data and we overlaid that with the USDA's map of where do the most number of food insecure people live in the United States. And then we lastly overlaid that with where FRN has chapters. And we know we have a highly efficient, scalable model. So through that, what we actually decided to do was target 7 states where we actually want to increase FRN's footprint over the next 18 months. And those are generally states in the Mississippi Delta, as well as California, Pennsylvania, and Kentucky. And so we're very much looking for engagement in terms of how we do that. So again, we can be very targeted in our impact. So as we look at strategy 2, there is very much an opportunity to partner with FRN in a variety of ways to build this out. The last strategy, which is around amplifying voice, has been something that we have heard from our community and stakeholders for a number of years. And we have felt now with this more robust framework, we're in a place to step in to advocacy work. And how we see FRN stepping into that is one of 2 ways. One is around actually helping students and alumni organize around issues that they care about, particularly relating to sustainability, job creation, food waste, and surplus food recovery. We know that there's a lot of action, particularly on the state level, around legislation that can move to help codify some of these behaviors in different states. And so we want to actually mobilize our 4,000 student universe to help move some of this legislation along. And that is work that some chapters have been doing for a while, but have requested additional support for. And we are now in a position to actually provide that to the network as a whole. Also, one of the things we know from our past surveys has been that students on a very informal basis influence one another in terms of how much food they may or may not take at the dining hall, or how they might recover surplus food, that they talk to each other informally. But what we have decided moving forward is, as part of being a member of a chapter, we actually have an expectation that you will talk to 8 to 10 more people about something related to sustainability or to food waste or to food mitigation. And that's really getting to an amplifying effect, where when you think we have 4,000 people that have committed to FRN, but what if each of them talked to 8 to 10 more people about the same types of issues that have really energized our student population? That is an incredibly amplifying effect that through this strategy, we're going to be putting structure around so we can more effectively mobilize our community. So this last slide here just brings all of the pieces together in terms of how we really see FRN's unique contribution rolling up to broader change and ultimately achieving our result of recovering surplus food to feed everyone who is hungry in the US. So that's a brief recap. And with that, I will turn it back over to Cassie and Regina.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Katie, for giving that overview. As I mentioned at the beginning of this call here today, we talked with a lot of stakeholders throughout the week and heard a lot of different things from different groups. So I wanted to turn it over to Regina to just give a quick summary and overview of the conversations that we've had, and then we can dive a little bit deeper into the common questions that we've received from different groups. So Regina?
Thanks so much, Cassie. Absolutely. It was so exciting to hear from so many people in such a concentrated amount of time, because over the past 5 years that I've been with FRN, I've had numerous conversations with people. I've talked with lots of students just all across the country during our national convenings that we've had. I've talked with lots of funders, people who are interested in supporting the work of FRN. And so that's what brought us to this place today, as I mentioned earlier. And then to have, early adopter conversations with a concentrated group of all these stakeholders before we present this out to the 5 stakeholder conversations that we've had. It was just very, very inspiring and energizing. And I felt very hopeful to hear that so many people really believe in FRN and really believe in the direction that we're going. And for so many, they say, we've wanted FRN to do this work since the very beginning, and it's just wonderful to see FRN mature to a place where we have the capacity, the faculties, the staff expertise to be able to do this work and do it more intentionally. So here's a list of some of the things that we've heard over the past week or so that we wanted to put forward that really culminates the thinking from our various stakeholders. And we wanted to put this here just so everyone can see what it was like to be part of these conversations. And if there are things that come to your mind that you maybe don't see here as part of a summary, again, that invitation to be in touch with us is here. If there's something that really calls to you when you look at this summary, please be in touch with us. Things are ever changing, as we all know. I know that is a truism to say. Things are ever changing. And when FRN was first created almost a decade ago, that landscape was so different than it is now. And we think about, again, getting to the other side of a food system that feeds more people and ensures less food is going to waste, really calls to all of us to be part of that. And as Katie said, even if you are a student who studied architecture or you studied art history, there are ways for all of us to be involved in this food system. But I also want to say, again, to get to this point of the work that FRN does is it's really hard when you think about the reason why we were created in the first place. But that people felt like there was something we could do around this hardship, and that is far too many people are hungry in this country. And when we throw away all this awesome food that we took so much time and resources, and a variety of people, touch this food all along the way of its growth and creation, that it harms our environment. Together, there's a lot of things that are working really well within this food system. And we want to continue to highlight those and celebrate those while knowing that as we move up and forward, there's so much more that we can do together to improve, because none of this work is static. And as we make and achieve our goals, well, that just demands that we do other things, and we can't rest on our laurels. So I'm really excited about the conversations we've had, because it is providing this clarity. And yes, we have the blessings of those in the vast network to keep doing the work that we're doing.
Thank you very much, Regina, for outlining the summary of the conversations that we've had. To dive a little bit deeper, we included here on the slide a question and answer portion in which we've kind of outlined the typical questions that we got as a result of having these conversations with various stakeholders that we've communicated with. And so I'll just go through and ask one question from each group to have Katie and Regina address just briefly, just to kind of recap the conversations we've had. So starting with our students, Katie, I had the question for you specifically. We had a lot of questions around how students will adjust and change their programming due to COVID and potentially not returning to campuses in the fall and what that might look like. So a common question we got is, what will FRN be providing in the fall so I can recover food safely?
Sure. Happy to take that one. And what I'm delighted to say is, in partnership with Greater Good, we were able to secure PPE for our chapters who are going back in the fall and will be able to recover food. So partnerships like that make this work possible. So that PPE will be available to our students in the fall.
Great, thank you very much, Katie. Moving on to our alumni group, Regina, I'd like to pose this question to you. A common question we received is, how can we participate in the workforce development work that FRN is advancing?
This was such an energizing question that we received from our amazing alums. And so there's so many different ways for our alums to be involved. And this is, and I want to broaden it also out to other folks who want to be involved too. So some of the ways that we feel that people can be involved, and in particular our alums who have been trained on how to handle food safely, have been able to go through all the variety of details that it takes to put in a successful recovery program. Some of the ways that we would love our alums to be involved are to, when you think about your place of work, is that a place of work that you think our students would be interested in learning more about? And again, it doesn't have to be because it's necessarily in the food recovery space or the food waste mitigation space or sustainability space, but there are so many companies now that want to think about their role in sustainability, even if they don't necessarily touch food. But we're all consumers of food when it's a good day, because knowing 54 million people during the pandemic are food insecure. We all consume food. So we would love to set up situations where your companies can talk directly with our students, so our students can get to know you and your companies can get to know our amazing students, your alums. You know how amazing you are. Does your company want to host interns? We, again, thousands and thousands and thousands of students who are currently going into part of our network that are in higher education. Many of them, time is very different, to say it mildly. Many students are online learning, which opens up opportunities where if you're not necessarily on your college campus, maybe you have a bit more time to actually take on an internship for the fall. We would love to have your companies, again, get to know our students and support them in their learning by having an internship. We also feel that, again, your company might want to start doing better around sustainability efforts. And there are a lot of different things that any one company can do. I was really proud to have a conversation just yesterday with one of our partner organizations that funds the work of FRN. And they're committed to the fact that if we all just do one small thing, we can really make a huge difference. And that's part of what FRN was founded upon, that we can stop throwing away really good food and provide that food to people in need. That's one small thing that the students thought that they could do. So are there ways that your company, if there's corporate dining there, if you host events, can FRN help your company just get that little bit better around sustainability efforts and being a champion for the work that we're doing? We know the talents of our alums are so vast, and perhaps writing for the FRN blog would be a really great way to highlight what you've learned. Lots of people are very curious. What does it look like? What does it feel like to be a food waste warrior? And so we definitely want to highlight your writing and get your name out there and tell your story. So just some of the ways that our alums can be involved.
Thank you very much, Regina, for addressing that question. On to our next group, we have donors and funders that we spoke with. Katie, I'll pose this question to you. How can this work be used more broadly in our network?
Sure. So what I outlined in terms of the results count framework is how FRN as an organization can work with other organizations and stakeholders. And so in an ideal world, we would actually be coming together with, for instance, ReFed or USDA, where we are using their data set, and actually we would set goals and targets together for how we would actually, mitigate waste and create more economic security. So that's how we will be using the framework to partner with others. I do believe that part of the benefit of using a results count framework is we can also apply it to chapters. So there might be ways that chapters across California, or even just across Northern California, could come together and actually say, here's by how much we actually want to reduce excess food in the system over the next 12 months or so. And that's part of the value of using a framework like this, and also part of the value of being a chapter of FRN, is that we can actually work to support students to set that kind of goal, which again benefits both the students as well as the communities, as well as the broader system in a lot of different ways. So that's one of the beauties of this results count framework, is it can be both used for us as a national organization in a lens in terms of how we partner and envision our impact, but we can also turn it inward and help it benefit our students on a micro level within the community.
Thank you very much, Katie. That's wonderfully put. Moving on to our dining providers and FRV accounts specifically, Regina, how would you address the question, how can I help ensure people in my community are fed?
Such an important question. And again, thinking about the fact that we heard this, so many times. It's important that, again, I just want to highlight the concern that so many people have, including our dining providers and our FRV accounts, that they see this food every day and they want to make sure that they're doing the right thing with that extra food that they might have. So we, first and foremost, if you are in a situation where you're you have a corporate kitchen, you're a restaurant, you're anywhere where there's food that you are making and there happens to be extra food, we invite you to be in touch with FRN. This is what we do literally every single day. And this was a big part of when Cassie joined the team, 2 years ago. This is what Cassie did every single day, was to help people where they had food to create a recovery program that worked best for their events, for their corporate dining. We understand that every kitchen is different. We understand the reasons why their surplus food is different. So if you just let us have a conversation with you, we're gonna work with you every step of the way. We're gonna be in your corner to help you establish a recovery plan that you can activate when you happen to have extra food. And sometimes we understand that you don't have extra food. And we help you find a place where you can safely bring that food, or partner agencies that can come to your place of business or to your event and recover that food. So we want to play that ever important matchmaker. We want to help you with the logistics. We want to help overcome any barriers that you have. I always tell people, we've heard a lot of reasons why we can't, and we're going to turn all those can'ts into cans, because it's all about making people feel comfortable and educating as to why they can feed their community. So there's that. So that's how FRN can help. But I also know that during this time of the pandemic, there are so many meal sites all across the country that are trying to address the sheer number of millions and millions and millions of Americans who are now food insecure. 17 million more people have been thrust into food insecurity because of the pandemic. And as a concerned citizen, there's also ways that you can volunteer to ensure that people are being fed in your community. But if you have surplus food, if you are in a situation right now where you're back to work, you know, you're having events safely, it is imperative that that food is not thrown away at the end of your event or at the end of a meal event. So please, please, please be in touch with us.
Regina, can I just add to that?
Love it.
This is also where the importance of our third strategy and advocacy work comes up, because again, if you are a concerned citizen, there are ways that you can engage both your local community as well as your legislator in terms of how do you make policies so there's functionally less people going to be in the line, both now and in the long term. And this is the type of conversation that we're having with our students and the type of work that we're preparing for them to do in the advocacy space. Because even though there might not be surplus food on some campuses, because dining has significantly changed from what it was, there is still the ability to speak up for how broken the food supply chain is and how government intervention can actually address that. We've seen that even with the $600 extra benefits, that there are some studies that have shown that it has closed some of the poverty gap. So again, this is part of how we would encourage you to be involved and encourage our network to say this is how we can support you in speaking up.
Katie, beautiful. Thank you so much for rounding that out. So critical. And I will say, so many of our students, as you mentioned, they're just already thinking to that bigger picture. So there are things that take, you know, a few years to get activated, and there are things that we can do today. So yeah, absolutely wonderful point.
Thank you both very much for addressing that question and really pulling it through and connecting it back to our framework that we've presented on here today. The final group and question that I'll ask here is from our hunger fighting nonprofits or partner agencies. Katie, how would you address the question, is there a way to get more produce to these groups?
Sure. This has been something that has come up on the partner agency survey year over year over year. And again, particularly during this time of COVID, was a question that was on the forefront of their minds during our conversation with them last week. And there is a couple different ways that we can actually collectively work to get the people on the front lines more fresh produce. And that aligns again with FRN working differently and having new partnerships to work in a different way. So specifically, we are actually in the process of running a series of pilots this fall with this notion of how can we actually mobilize people differently and quicker for deeper impact and more results. So let me put a specific example on that. We are actually running a series of gleaning events this fall in our communities across the United States with the hypothesis of, can we actually amass more volunteers in a concentrated way to recover more food faster so we can feed more people in the community faster. So by participating with us in gleaning efforts that we, again, can use and leverage our network to arrange in a fairly quick turnaround, that's one way where we can help our partner agencies feed people who are experiencing hunger in their communities today. We also, again, we know that through this advocacy work, there are purchase programs that can be influenced. There are advocacy efforts that we can do to actually change the way the surplus is actually tilled under, and we can incentivize a different type of system. So again, getting involved in the advocacy work to actually fundamentally change the supply chain so we have something different on the other side of COVID is another way that people can get involved. And those are just two pilots that we're running this fall, one around cleaning and one about mobilizing students around advocacy for certain pieces of legislation to help alter the supply chain in their communities. So that's just two ideas right off the top.
So wonderful. Thank you very much, Katie and Regina. I know over the week we had a lot of different conversations and really interesting and exciting times here as we're moving forward into this new strategic framework and way that FRN is really doing our work. I wanted to provide an opportunity to you both before we wrap up here today. Can you share a little bit of your takeaways that you had from convening in these conversations and just any final notes that you have for our audience here today? And Katie, if you want to get started.
Sure. So the first thing I will say is I just thank everyone who participated last week. And I was overwhelmed by the support and sense of community on every single call we've had and the energy that we have seen following those conversations. And one of the questions, and Regina teed it up so beautifully at the beginning of this webinar, that has really guided our work is how do we build something better on the other side? We know that food service and food recovery is going to look very, very different after COVID. And so how do we actually implement practices now that can carry us forward into a better future? And that's really what's anchoring this work and really in service of our larger results. And I'm really excited to see how this work evolves and how we learn together as a community moving forward.
And for me, I definitely want to echo Katie's sentiment, absolutely. Some of the takeaways that I have are building in, and having this invitation to have a faster feedback loop with the support of the variety of stakeholders that we have. We're being very transparent, and maybe some might say, very vulnerable to opening up the workings that we are engaged in to everyone in a very, very public way, because we do this work without ego. We do this work in service to others, and because things are changing so much, the needs of the communities are quick. They just need so much in a variety of different ways so quickly, that change has to meet those needs. That requires us to have a feedback loop that makes sense for where we are now. And we look forward to taking the learnings of the feedback loop and infusing that into the structures of how we make things better. As Katie said, when we get to the other side of this, that we are now leaning on more and more things that are of a caliber that's going to help more people. So that was definitely something I took away from our many conversations. And then the variety of relationships that we have at FRN. I'm just always so struck by that, how many people want to help, whether that is by, I haven't recovered, I'm an alum, I haven't recovered in a while, I'm reactivated to do that. Our students who have always been, year after year after year, new faces, returning faces who are so dedicated to doing the work. We love technology. It is so important to how we can live better lives, but sometimes you just need people who will show up and recover the food and bring it to those in need. And there are so many different relationships that want to support that kind of activity. It was really heartwarming for me. And again, as I said earlier, just hearing from so many different people that we believe in FRN and we think FRN is going in the right direction. And I feel like I can contribute my ideas to the direction in which FRN is going was really heartening for me. So I feel like I have a really good, strong direction for the work that we're going to do. As I said, it's some of it is new, a lot of it is not, but together we can make things stronger for more people. And I know that FRN can play a very big part in that.
Thank you both for those great final comments. We are so excited about moving forward and diving in deeper into this work, as Regina put it. Now we're getting down and doing the work now. So we really appreciate everyone who attended live to our Roundtable Talks last week, and the folks that are catching up on recordings and this recordings. We definitely look forward to talking with you all deeper and more frequent about the work that FRN is doing and it continues to do. We'd like your feedback and your input. As Regina put it, we are being transparent in this work here together. So please reach out so we can talk more in depth together. As you know, this is the recording, so everyone has access, but if you have any questions or anything, let us know, and definitely make sure to follow us on social media and so we can get in touch with you more. Thank you so much to Katie and Regina for being wonderful hosts for our conversation here today, and we look forward to connecting with everyone again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.